Oh, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the world of finances, born and raised on the streets of Detroit with over 24 years of finance. I can't even do this.
It's awesome. Don't cut it.
With over 24 years of experience in the financial industry, president and CEO of Wisdom Investments, the architect of wisdom himself, Jose.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Travis.
I did that out of a request of you because in your questionnaire, you're like, I've always pictured myself being introduced this way. Well,
That's awesome.
you may never become a wrestler or a UFC fighter, but at least I gave you an opportunity to be introduced by an announcer. So.
Thank you. You know, I have this thing where church introduces pastors, okay?
Yeah.
And yesterday we had our new pastor introduced at church, and they introduced him to the Chicago Bulls theme music, and he's from New York.
Yeah.
So I just feel like everybody should have a theme song, like come out to Mr. Perfect Wrestling music or The Undertaker's music, and I think it's just fun. You know?
I don't know what mine would be. Maybe I'll have an answer before the end of the episode. We'll see.
It's awesome.
Speaking of churches and like new speakers, I always find it funny. At least at our church, it's not like super big. The lead pastor, he always has to come out on stage before the guest comes out, and he asks all of us to like applaud for the person. Yeah. And I wonder if it's thinking of like, well, if this guy bombs, at least he felt good about being here or something like that.
Always feels better if somebody claps. And there was nobody to clap to the theme music just now. I feel like we needed an audience applause there.
Awesome. Well,
there you
go. So, Jose, thank you for joining me. Before we jump in, I would love to just have you introduce yourself and just tell the viewers a little bit more about what makes you who you are.
Thanks. Thank you, Travis. Appreciate it. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm a financial advisor. That's part of the reason you're having me on the show. I'm a certified financial planner, certified kingdom advisor for Wisdom Investments. I'm a Christ follower, a husband, a father, a coach, a volunteer, and all kinds of other things in my life. And all those things kind of make me who I am and are helping me to become who I'm supposed to be in life. You know?
Yeah. The wisdom is in your business name. So, but that's all, that's really why I want to bring you on the episode. I think as creatives, we get so caught up in the craft and just doing a really good job for our clients that we kind of lose track of like what's actually going on behind the scenes with our own finances and like what is our future going to look like. And so I thought it'd be really great to bring someone like you on, especially right now. We're coming into tax season. People kind of think about this stuff a little bit more at the beginning of the year. So I figured this would be the perfect time to bring you on. And I know you have a wealth of knowledge that you can bring to us, but also on the flip side, you are a business owner too. This is your thing that you're running. And so I kind of want to start there and just kind of walk through that. So tell me a little bit more about like how this all came to be, how you kind of inquired Wisdom Investments and like how you've essentially gotten to this point that you're at now.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Well, at first I was duped, Travis. I don't know if I've ever shared that with you. But when I was 20 years old, I went for a job interview with a small financial planning company in Detroit.
Yeah.
And I thought I was interviewing for an IT job.
Yeah.
And I went in for this interview. It was a dual interview. It was kind of weird. They have myself and another person, her name was Angela, in this interview. Yeah. And while the gentleman interviewed us for the job. And 20 years old, I have no idea what's going on. And about halfway through this interview, I realized this is not about IT at all. This is about financial planning. Mm-hmm. And I was upset, bamboozled, like, why am I here for this job interview? And the woman next to me, Angela, was a little older. I think she already had her master's degree at the time. And Angela just sold herself on this job. I mean, she really sold herself. You would have thought it was the greatest job in the world. At the end of the interview, the gentleman, Dave, who was interviewing us, says to Angela, hey, you're hired. And Jose, I think you should go back to school. And at that point, I'm rejected by something. Mm-hmm. And then I think, man, this must be a good thing. This woman really wants this job. It's got to be a good thing. I look him straight in the eyes and I say, there's no way that I cannot not do this job. And then he stops and he says, well, tell me more. And then I began to sell him on why I would be a good financial planner. So that's where it started. A year later, I went to Chase, worked at Chase for about 13 years in a myriad of roles. I was a banker, a financial advisor, a sales manager, a branch manager. And it was in 2015, there were some things I was hearing. There was a church sermon about risk that was preached by a gentleman named Steve Carter that really had me feeling like, I think I can take some risk. Then there was the Global Leadership Summit that year. My wife and I had talked about me opening up my own business, and she left the first session of the Global Leadership Summit and said to me, Jose, I have to let you do this. And so High Five Financial was born from that, the first financial firm that I opened up. And immediately when I opened up that firm, I had met a gentleman named Bill Kamisic who owned Wisdom Investments. And long story short, I opened up the company. Bill says to me the second time we talked, well, I really wish you wouldn't have opened up your company because I wanted to talk to you about joining mine. And long story short, I ended up joining Wisdom Investments a year later. Bill retired 5 years after that. I purchased the company, and here we are today.
I love how like you were essentially kind of being prepared for this role that you're in now. So what year would it have been that Bill retired and you took over?
That was 5 years ago that Bill retired. I still kept Bill on as an advisor to the firm for a while. You could never go wrong with having a wiser voice in your life guiding you and directing you.
That's awesome. And now you're kind of growing your own team too, in a way.
Yes. Yeah. It's awesome. I hired my first financial advisor a couple years ago, brought an intern on a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
We were in the middle of interviewing another financial advisor for a role, and I've come to the conclusion that it's time for an assistant and a client service role. So we're looking at that probably the second half of this year.
That's great. What have been some of the challenges that have come up with that expanding? Because I know, I'm sure your industry could probably be similar to mine, where a lot of times it's a solopreneur like the whole time they have the business. So they might do this for 10, 20, 30 years, and it's always just been them. So what's been some of the challenges that you face with adding on more people?
Perfectionism, I would say. When it comes to bringing other people on who are relying on you, counting on you, you want everything to be perfect.
Yeah.
When you've done something for so long a certain way, which you have, right? Being a professional, you wouldn't understand this. You could walk into a situation and right off the top of your head answer A, B, C, D, and E. But when you bring somebody else on board, they kind of have to be coached and led, and every system needs to be up to par, and you have to have a process and checklists, and every little detail has to be right. So I would say making sure that I can adequately care for another person is probably the biggest challenge, at least internally. You don't want to fail somebody. You want to make sure that their family's taken care of, and you want to be a good boss. You want to be a good leader, and I would say that that's probably the biggest thing.
That's great. Now, I know you started in Detroit, but now you're here in Chicagoland, Illinois. So when did that move happen?
2006, roughly.
Yeah.
I met a young lady named Myra. I'll take the next question. I'm sure you're going to ask it. So, my wife, I met her in 2005, and we were long distance dating. And I kind of knew, like, there's no way that she's coming to Detroit to live with me. Yeah. I'm going to have to come to Chicago. And it was the right thing for me anyway. So up and left Detroit. I actually was fairly successful with a financial advisor position that I had in Detroit, and I gave it away, basically. I let it go. Through that chase and left and came here and started over.
Yeah. Cool. What has made you so passionate about financial advisory in particular?
Yeah. As I'm getting older, it's really seeing other people's dreams come true, right? When you get to sit down with somebody and you find out what's important to them, and you get just a glimpse into what they want their future to be, and you get to help plan and process that for whatever time they're working with you, it's really satisfying to know that you can have someone accomplish their goals, their dreams, their values, like their God-given purpose in life. A lot of people go to a financial advisor and, it's all about goals, which is great. We all want to accomplish goals. But I think the more that we can help other people thrive in who they're meant to be in life, and we can do that with finance, to me, that's really rewarding and satisfying.
Yeah, there's almost a freedom to it. I know before I was I'll even rewind back to like 2011, like when I first started freelancing, I was still like doing just my own taxes, let alone, and how confusing that was, like, especially as I started becoming self-employed and I'm getting like 1099s from this company and that company, and it was just like a mess. And so immediately I was like, I had to find a CPA, like I can't do this on my own, and when you're starting out, you're always counting the dollars, like, oh, I'm gonna have to pay this guy like a percentage, or I'm gonna have to like pay this fee to get my taxes done, whatever it is. But then in turn, you typically end up making more because you have this person with wisdom way past what you have when it comes to finances, and they're kind of pointing you in the right direction and helping you and kind of almost like holding your hand, and how that could change everything. Like, I remember the first time like we actually met with a financial advisor and just took a deep dive of our finances. One little thing they told me to change with the way I do my tax return, like, saved us way more than we ever invested in them. Right. And I think people like lose track of that, of like, oh, this current fee right now, but that little fee might result in like so much money that could be saved.
Agreed. We can do DIYers, right? We get DIYer people all the time. And the truth is not everybody needs a financial advisor.
Yeah.
I think a lot of creative business owners probably need a financial advisor. Yeah. And each one of us who own our own business individually need advisors in general. For lack of wisdom, plans fail, right? For lack of advisors, plans fail. Yeah. And each one of us need wise people in our lives to help guide us and direct us. Yeah. And we need to understand when that added expense and cost to our business or to us personally is more beneficial than the DIY. Yeah. And I just hired an executive coach this year. Yeah. That's thousands of dollars out of my pocket. But I recognize I need another wise counselor in my life to help me. And it's the same thing with a CPA. The big problem for a lot of business owners is they have a good idea. Mm-hmm. They perform very well. And this one thing with their finances, with financials, with filing taxes properly, with understanding the tax code, that's a big area that makes people fail. Now, I'm not a CPA, just as a disclosure, but I think almost every person probably should have a CPA in their lives if they're a business owner. I
think of, I talk to creatives sometimes and they'll be upset because they're like, oh, I had this lead, but now this lead is like, they're just doing the videos themselves or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, they decide not to go with me. They're just going to shoot on their phone. It's kind of the same thing when they're like, oh, I'm not going to get a CPA or a financial advisor. I'm going to just do it myself. It's you're kind of doing the same thing, like to your industry in a sense. And I think, it's again, like you're saying, like, and sometimes it's like hard to do that outsourcing, but that's probably like one of the first places you could start is just to get someone in there helping either with your taxes or your finances or both, because it's just going to take such a load off the back end. So.
Agreed. Profit and loss statements are challenging for a new business owner to operate or to understand. I went to school for finance. I learned how to handle profit and loss statements, and I still needed a CPA. I was super thankful to have my CPA step in and help me, especially when Bill retired. Bill was a CPA for the firm. Yeah. Our firm was CPA driven to begin with. And so I was fortunate enough in the beginning. I had Bill. I didn't have to worry about a ton. But there's lots of organizations out there that can help you out. And it's just, such a small thing, a small expense for the most part, can really take that worry and burden off for you. And then you're not fighting with the IRS a year from now, 2 years from now.
Cool. Well, let's back it up a little bit. So for those who maybe aren't aware, like we're throwing out CPA, financial advisor, maybe like, I don't even know what the difference is. Could you kind of explain exactly like what makes you different than a CPA and kind of like what your day-to-day looks like for your clients?
So as a certified financial planner, I help clients plan for their goals, their objectives. I help them kind of draw a roadmap for the future that helps them get from point A to point B in the most efficient way possible. Mm-hmm. Those goals may be retirement, opening up a business, planning for their kids' education, leaving a legacy for their family. In the middle of that, when a lot of people think about financial advisors, they think about some of the tax planning that's involved. And some of that involves tax loss harvesting and opening up the right type of an account to avoid taxes or to mitigate some of the money that we pay to the IRS. A CPA really steps in to help with really a broad range of services, truthfully. When a new business gets set up, a CPA can be a great resource to help them get set up. Of course, there's going to be tax prep. There's also going to be pulling in a CPA for your tax planning for the future. Some of our high net worth clients, it has been one of the smartest things that we could possibly do to bring in other professionals into the meeting like CPAs to help them plan accordingly for their futures. So a CPA is going to be more on the tax side, but you also have CPAs who are investment advisors. They happen to do both jobs. And they're business planning. So when you need to file your business taxes, and when you need to people to handle your QuickBooks and your profit and loss statements and those types of items, that's really going to be more where your CPA steps in.
Is there a right time for someone to consider bringing on a financial advisor?
The sooner you bring a professional into your life, typically the better. Mm-hmm. Even if you feel like you can't afford it or it might not be the right time, I think the earlier the better. As an example, one of the organizations we partner with is Ramsey Solutions, Dave Ramsey's company. And we happen to receive listeners who come to us to invest their money with us. And Dave Ramsey has this 7-step baby 4-step process. You're probably familiar with it, right? And so you get a number of people who get through steps 1, 2, and 3, and then it's time to invest and they want to see an advisor. Typically, that's probably a good time. When you have an emergency fund saved up, when you've paid off some credit card debt, when you actually have the ability to save, that's when you might want a financial planner, a certified financial planner. But sometimes we need other people in our lives. Sometimes we need a budget counselor. Sometimes we even need a licensed therapist to help you with money, because some people have some really bad habits with money and they need extra help. But the answer I would give you is there's no perfect time to get an advisor, and the earlier that somebody works with an advisor, the better off typically their finances will be.
Yeah. To back up there a little bit, for those who aren't familiar with Dave Ramsey's baby steps, you want to explain what 1 through 3 is?
Yeah. Thank you very much. So the first step is having $1,000 saved up in the bank, right? That's pretty basic. Get $1,000 saved up. The second is paying off all consumer debt, or getting rid of your credit cards, getting rid of your auto loans, those types of payments that hamstring you from being able to save. The third step is having your 3 to 6 month emergency fund saved up. And really, even as a financial advisor, as somebody who invests money, you really can't invest clients' money if they don't have some kind of reserves to get to, right? You want to make sure that you have something in case the markets drop or you lose a job or some kind of emergency happens. You need money to access outside of the market so that you have some kind of cushion.
Yeah. And then there's the creative business owner, step 4. Their step 4 is buy all the camera gear. Buy all of it.
Yeah.
But no, I make a joke of that, but I thought that would be an interesting thing to touch on. So I know I've fallen victim of this. I see this very often when people start out. It's kind of this cycle they get into. It's like, oh, people are starting to pay me to do this job. I'm going to buy more gear, and then I'm going to take that gear. I'm going to make more money, buy more gear, make more money, buy more gear. And they get into this cycle, and it's not that that's all bad, I would say. Like, you need gear to perform your job. But there eventually comes a point where you have all the gear, but then they're still buying more gear. Yeah. So I would kind of like to hear your thoughts on that, like kind of as a whole, like investing in the business, like should you always be investing in your business? Are there times you don't need to? Like, I just kind of love to hear like your thoughts on that.
Yeah. There is so much packed in that question, Travis, especially in 2026 when every AI tool is becoming available to us to make us more efficient at our jobs. And it's like, oh, look at this camera. It has this neat little feature. And if I take pic now, it's automatically going to upload here, and it's automatically going to go into my editing system and this or that. So I think we can get sidetracked and we can get distracted by the newest, shiniest thing that's out there. Yeah. At the end of the day, you know what you're doing very well. It doesn't matter if you have an old camera from the 1980s or from the 2000s. You're going to make it look good and professional either way, right? Mm-hmm. And we both know that there's some there's some benefit to some of those older style cameras than there are to the digital cameras. Yeah. But I think that some people go overboard because they feel that it's necessary. Mm-hmm. Like, I have to have this next newest thing to do my job the best I can. Yeah. And I'm guilty of that also. Implementing all kinds of AI technologies into the company and thinking I need to reinvest in that. But when you look at the expenses and you start to judge things from a real financial standpoint, from a real world standpoint, you need to look at every single purchase you make for your business and decide, is this really necessary? Does this one item, does this new camera provide me any extra revenue? Mm-hmm. If that's true, if the new equipment is going to give you added revenue, then maybe it's the right thing. But if you can do your job with what you have and continue to build slowly, then you add in technologies little over time. And that's really the smartest, safest way to go about. But it's really easy. We all know the people who sit in line at the Apple store the first day that the new thing comes out, right? I mean, your techie people are going to be your techie people. Your creatives are going to be your creatives. There's going to be people who are always sitting in line for the new iPhone thing or the new Apple thing. It's controlling yourself and making sure that that doesn't make sense for my business. This is not just a pure enjoyment thing. I got to make money doing it.
And I know I would fall victim of that cycle, the make money, spend it on gear, before I had professional help, because I didn't really have fine goals. And I also didn't really know what to do with the money. Mm-hmm. You know, like, I'm making more money than I did when I worked at McDonald's. So it's, what do I do with it? You know? And it's like, I'll buy more camera equipment because it seems like when I shoot things, I make money, you know? And it's just, you kind of get in that cycle. But by bringing in a professional, it helped me set goals. And it opened up my eyes of, here are other things you could do with this extra money you now have. You know, You can invest it, which is always great. You could donate it. You could use that money and give it to someone else who needs it. There's a lot of other things you can do with the money outside of just buying more camera equipment.
Right. And some of these guys don't even have a budget, Travis.
Yeah.
A lot of business owners sit down, they're flying by the seat of their pants, and they don't even have an actual budget that says where their revenue and expenses are going.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the first step. Make sure you have a budget. Make sure you have a plan to allocate your resources where they need to go.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm guilty as well, right? I'm generating more revenue than I ever have in my life.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to say, well, I got to hire the next person, or I got to add this new software because I can.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, again, that's not always the best thing.
I believe for us too, the budgeting starts before you even take the job, because you want to make sure when you're sending a quote, you're even budgeting that out, because you might be spending this much time shooting, this much time editing. You need to hire extra help. There's all the revisions that might happen. Mm-hmm. And I even see it kind of go off the rails a little bit before then, of where they're not even quite budgeting right for the project itself. So they just kind of throw out a price to this client. Next thing they know, if they actually did the math, they were making probably less than they would have at a fast food restaurant.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's as a business owner, that stinks when that happens.
Yeah.
Like this year, my oldest goes off to college. Yeah. I could use a bonus or two from the company this year.
Yeah.
So Jose, reel it in a little bit. Don't spend so much on this, that, and the other, because this kid's college hopes are pretty high.
Yeah. Let's go back again to the beginner business owners. I'm talking maybe they've been doing this for, I would even say 5 years or less, and it could be even longer too. But what's one thing you feel like they could do right now to better their finances as they're going into this business?
For a new business owner, I truly think that the biggest problem I see with any business owner is having that professional there to help them out. Yeah. The more advice, the better off you're going to be. When I think about creatives, right, and people in your business, if we can transition there, I think thinking through there, creative business owners in particular, you spend so much time making somebody else's dreams come true, right? Every waking minute is about making this podcast look awesome, right? Making Jose look good on TV, and making the wedding just perfect, the bride, the perfect shot. Every single thing that you guys do is focused on the vision and dreams of another person. And a lot of new business owners, they've started their dream, they've started their vision, but they haven't they haven't put the whole thing together and just drew up a plan for the future. Mm-hmm. A lot of times we're flying by the seat of our pants and we don't have a plan for the future. So I think a lot of these new business owners need a plan for the long term. And it's easy, even as a business owner, I think about it this way for myself. Well, how big do I want this thing to get? Is it $1 billion firm? Is it 25 employees? What's the thing? What's the goal? Yeah. But sometimes the vision is intangible, right? Our vision is to be the most trusted provider of financial services in the Chicagoland area, right? Yeah. That doesn't have a building attached to it. That doesn't have a number of people attached to it. But I think people need to sit down and write a business plan. Yeah. I recently went through my old business plan from the first company, and how much it has changed and morphed. But at least I had a basis for something. I wrote out this plan. I wrote out my goals, my agenda for the future, and I've watched those come true. Mm-hmm. So I think in the first 5 years, you need to have wisdom with you, and you need to have a plan for the future.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So what about finances makes you because you've essentially made this your career. You're helping people with their finances. Why is that?
Well, first it was dumb luck, Travis, as you heard, right? They didn't even want me, but then I something about it just clicked, right? Yeah. So when I was a little boy, I can remember being 7 years old, sitting down with my grandfather. ABC News was on TV, and I saw the tickers going across the bottom. I had no idea what the tickers really meant until my grandfather told me, but you had the green and the red, the up and the down, and it was just in your face the whole time. And so I was constantly seeing these companies go by of money up, money down. So I think the first thing, that was my first kind of introduction to the stock market, and that kind of grew. I became more entrepreneurial. I like to grow a business. I like to do things to make money. And then I realized I could do it for other people. And the passion behind that, again, goes back to values, goes back to dreams, goes back to people being able to do the things that they want to do in life. But what drew that? When I got a call, I got a letter in the mail, a card one day from some simple advice I gave. It wasn't a client I made a ton of money off of or anything, but the note simply said, "Hey, Jose, thank you so much. The time we spent the other day talking about my daughter made us do A, B, and C. So we made these choices because of it. And we are so grateful and thankful because of you. Our lives are forever changed because you were in our life." In our lives. And it's things like that. When you get to affect somebody's life in a positive way, and when you realize that what you bring to the table has real value and meaning, then that just keeps building up that bucket. That keeps pouring into you. And that's something you want to overspill into everyone around you. Mm-hmm. So people starting their own businesses, people going to become new financial advisors, just people accomplishing their dream in life. Maybe they want to be a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever it is. Having been encouraged in your practice and in your craft and what your dream is by somebody else who was affected. I think that's, there aren't even words for it.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's great. Thinking of the future of a business owner, what are some practical steps you would give them when it comes to just preparing for their financial future? Because I think a lot of times, again, we kind of get thrown into this, especially as creatives. You just kind of pick up a hobby. Next thing you know, people are paying you money for it. And then all of a sudden you have this opportunity for it to become your full-time thing. But it doesn't have a lot of those benefits that working for someone full-time may have. A lot of times when someone is working a 9 to 5, all the things like their retirement and investments and all that kind of stuff is just set up for them. I mean, even sometimes their insurance is like, they don't have to worry about that. Their employer is doing that. But when we're self-employed, those benefits still exist for us, but we have to kind of go get them ourselves. So yes. What pieces of advice would you share on someone to help them prepare for their future?
Yeah. I'll be a broken record and say, hire an advisor over and over and over again, right? Hire Wisdom Investments. But a lot of business owners, they get so stuck in the things to make the business operate, right? Yeah. They're developing the thing. They're selling the thing. They're going out and finding new clients. They're marketing. And then there's the financial aspect of just making sure that we pay the bills. So having an advisor, having people around you to help you is really going to be helpful in that area, because you have a myriad of other things that you need to do to ensure that your business is successful. Like, you had to get up this morning and brush your teeth first, right? And you had to take a shower. Then you had to get some coffee and get out the door in this 0-degree weather on a Monday at 8 a.m. to get to Bell Works, Chicagoland, right? Yeah. And that's just the start of your day. Everything else, right? I gotta get here and take care of every task. And there are so many mind-numbing tasks as a business owner that it's really helpful to have somebody that can take something off of your plate. Yeah. And somebody who's really good at what they do as well. They can take this part off of your plate so that you can be more successful for your future, have a more successful business.
Yeah. And I think what's great about someone in your role is you're essentially freeing up their time so they have more time to do the craft. Yes. And I think people lose track of that as well, because they get into this and then they're like, this isn't what I thought it would be. Like, I'm spending all my time in like QuickBooks and places like that. Well, if you hire someone in that role, it allows you to have more time to do that other thing. I've referenced this before on our podcast, but like mowing the grass and landscaping, like I got rid of that like in 2021, I think, like very before we had our first kid. Right. And it was almost like a pride thing. Like, I didn't want to let go of it, but it's like, if I'm not mowing the grass, think about like those extra hours and how I could use that. If it's on the business, it's with my family, it's whatever, like pretty much I could do anything with that time that I was not having, that was not beneficial. Like, as an owner of a business and a husband and a father, it's like my time is better spent probably not mowing our grass.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, and this is a good plug for Mrs. Hall from my 12th grade video productions class, right, Travis? So I can grab a camera and I can record something and I can edit a couple of things. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it would probably be very helpful for me if Visual Filmworks helped me with a thing or two, right? And I may have the skill and talent. I also took auto mechanics in high school, 2 years of auto mechanics. I can work on my car. I can change the brakes. I can do this or that. But the little nuances, I don't necessarily know the torque specs to put the spark plugs back into my engine. And the way cars have changed, the technologies have changed so much over the years. It just doesn't work for me to work on my car the same way. Yeah. Or to bleed my brakes. My truck needs the brakes bled right now, and it takes a lot of time. Do I want to take how many hours on my Saturday to bleed those brakes when my number one goal this year is to spend more time with my 17-year-old before he goes off to college? Mm-hmm. So it's opportunity cost, just like in economics for anything that we do in life. We can spend a bunch of time turning a ratchet, but I can take it to my mechanic and he can have it done in a couple hours and I can have my time with my kid.
Yeah, that's great. let's say someone is starting out, they're not quite ready to make that step to hiring someone professional, but they at least need some tools to make it easier and maybe automate some things. Are there any tools you would recommend to someone?
Might need to be more specific, but I think the first thing I think about is bartering for services, right? If you don't really have the funds yet, and we have all these connections in our community, right? I mean, we go to all these networking events, we're part of all these different organizations and so on. Just maybe connecting with somebody, say, hey, I don't really have the funds right now, but would you be willing to trade services? That still exists in the world today, and it's helpful.
So we're talking about what you should do to prepare for your future, but I want to talk a little bit more about the why I should be preparing for my future.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about this question is where there is no vision, the people perish. And you have to have a vision for your life. If you don't have a vision for your life, for your business, for whatever it is you're trying to accomplish in life, someone will give you a vision, or you'll be living somebody else's vision. You know that old saying, you ask somebody how they're doing, and they say, I'm living the dream. Well, I ask the question, now, whose dream is it, right? Are you living, for me, was it Jamie Dimon's dream over at JP Morgan Chase? No, now it's Jose's dream, right? I'm living my dream. And I reflect back to being in business school. In business school, I put this vision board up. I think I told you about it, right? And this vision board had all these extravagant items. I was far more material back then than I am today. And this vision board had the normal things first: a family, a house, but the house was no regular house. It was a mansion. Then it had a business, but it wasn't just a business. It was a full-blown enterprise, factory-looking type building on the visual board. A McLaren F1, the 1997 McLaren F1. I had a yacht. I had a jet. I had my own private island on this vision board, right? And one day I woke up and I realized I kind of have these things, right? I mean, maybe not in the extravagant, luxurious sense of having my own yacht or having my own jet, but at the end of the day, putting those things down on paper kind of solidified what I wanted for the future, right? Jim Carrey wrote himself an eight-figure check, I think it was, years ago before he did the movie either Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, or The Mask. And one day he got that 8-figure check. And I think, I know that God wants to bless us in life, right? Like that, like if we're, with all these things are happening for us, so many great things are coming our way. There's so many ways that we need to put it out there into the world, into the universe, that this is what I want, and then watch it come to fruition, work towards it so that it comes to fruition, make a vision and work towards it.
That's great. I want to talk about, we're talking about goals and visions and everything. One thing I admire about you too is how involved you are in the local community. And I would love to just hear, one, what you're involved with, but two, how in turn that has helped your business by being involved in local things.
First of all, it's just a general care for everyone around us, right? Like I have this belief that if we're blessed, we're a blessing for other people, and we're not just supposed to hoard it all. So I mean, there are so many organizations that I'm tied to and that I work with, things I care about. I can rattle off a couple if you're okay with that.
Yeah, go for it.
The Willow Creek Care Center that helps provide necessary resources to people who are underprivileged in the area, who need help with food, clothing, shoes, anything that you can think of, employment services, legal services. They do a myriad of things for the community. I love some organizations like Centro de Información, which helps immigrants become citizens. I think you went to a lunch with me one time there, right? Then I sit on the board of the Elgin Parks and Recreation Foundation, which helps kids who can't afford all the Parks and Rec stuff. There's now a new one, Boricuas Unidos, which is trying to promote Puerto Rican heritage. And so many other organizations. You and I even sit by a couple here. Fellowship Housing is here in our building, and so many others. I'm sorry if I can't remember them all and say all that I work with. But one of the things that when I first started my business, what was important, what I knew was important was that I get established in my community. So in addition to these things being important to me, the people in my community needed to see that these things were important to me. And then opportunities kept opening up for things that I actually like sitting on the Parks and Rec board. It's one of the funnest, most exciting experience I got to have with some people who care deeply about other people. And they're just a really awesome group of people, right? So, when I think about these things in my life and these organizations and the good work that they're doing, like I'm trying to pass it on in the same way it was passed on to me. So staying involved with these organizations moving forward, there are key people in my life who help lift me up. None of us get there by ourselves, but staying and giving back and being a part of these organizations allow me to continue to give back to things I care about.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it all comes full circle, and that's why financial freedom is so important, because it allows you to have time and assets that you can give to those. I know even with myself, it's like always been a struggle because I grew up in a blue collar small town. And so within that small town, you know, you're always kind of like, it's almost like you have to suffer for your work, you know, like you have to make ends meet, you have to be suffering, you have to do hard work, you have to do this. And I've had to like rewire my brain to realize that I can like have a career that is enjoyable, and then that I can also and you had mentioned like the bucket and kind of overflowing, like my bucket could be overflowing, like I could have more than enough, but then that allows me to pour into others' buckets. And I think about how, like, you know, we'll do like a manufacturing shoot and it might be like a $20,000 job, you know, and it's a lot of money to make from one client. But by me landing that job because they have the budget for it, now if this nonprofit comes through and maybe they have like a third of that budget, I could probably take that job because it's like, I know how much money I have total. And it's like, hey, I really like what this nonprofit organization's doing. Like, to give back to them, like, let's do this for like half of the price of what we would normally do. But if I didn't know my numbers and if I didn't have that financial freedom, I would be like almost like desperately latching on to every job that came through. You know, I'd be like trying to like make as much as I could out of every job. But because I have this financial freedom, I can pick and choose where I spend my time and how I invest, you know, our craft, essentially. So
that's right. And I think that's the freedom and independence we're looking for as business owners, right? It's like thinking about the Boy Scouts and what they did in their future and being able to give back because they did something for you. It's freeing when your bucket's overflowing and you can keep pouring into other people. It's just really a phenomenal experience. And for me, it's kind of what gives me joy and lifts me up in life.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's the same for you, but you were talking about the Boy Scouts, and it got me thinking too. It's kind of surreal because, you know, like growing up to not really have a lot, and even in college, you know, I was kind of bootstrapping it on my own. I had support from my parents and stuff, but you know, a lot of that I had to pay back myself. And so, like, you know, I had help from other sources and everything, and now I'm in the position where I can be of that help. And it's cool to see that all come full circle. Right. Like when you know, at least for myself, it's like you were kind of relying on help from whether it's the government or other nonprofits or whatever. And now it's like, you don't need the help anymore. So now you can be that help to give back, which is amazing.
Absolutely. You know, when I grew up in Detroit, and you know, you say the word Detroit, lots of things.
Like, oh, Detroit.
Yeah. It's not like the first thing that comes to your mind is Barry Sanders and Pistons, Bad Boys, champions all the time, right? But growing up in the city of Detroit comes with its hardships. Yeah. So I was that kid. I had the great fortune when I was in Detroit to go to Catholic school, so I had a really good schooling. But the influences and everything around me was still there. Yeah. Right? It was a fight. It was a struggle to get out of there. It's like a dogfight your whole life to get away from some influences and some things that are negative, that are pulling you down, that aren't trying to let you move forward and you know, help other people. Yeah. And so I find myself like with the new organization with Boricos Unidos, it's like I get to try to build into little kids that were like me. Right. Yeah. They even look like me and they might think like I did. And so it's like really awesome that you can come from those humble circumstances, however our circumstances were, whether it was on the farm or whether it was in the city, and you can see what you're doing now can give back to people that are like you.
So we're filming this in January. By the time this goes live, I think it will go live in February. So we're still right before that kind of cutoff of taxes being due. So I thought it would be good to just end with some practical advice you could give to someone. So thinking about our audience and that it's creative entrepreneurs, you know, a lot of photographers, videographers, oftentimes it might be a full-time thing, but they're kind of doing this solo, you know, they might be by themselves or just like an assistant or something. What is like kind of a practical takeaway you'd want to give them when it comes to tax season, and just something they could do to make tax season a little bit easier for them?
The first thing I think is a checklist. Checklists work wonderfully. There's a good book on it, by the way, about checklists. Some people have no idea what to do next or what's available to them. Well, we have Chat GPT now that you can feed a ton of information in and get almost a personalized list. Good checklist of items that need to be accomplished. A good checklist that'll tell you kind of what next steps are. And like we've been talking about during this podcast, go talk to somebody. Do what you can. Right? Do what you can. Right? Just get out there and do what you can. Find a professional who can help you out with whatever resources you have to help you out.
Yeah. I think the checklist is huge. My CPA, I do this every year. I have to gather up the same documents every year. I forget every year what they need from me. You know, it's like Groundhog Day. It's like they're like, all right, Travis, give me this, and this. And then by the time it's like the next year, I'm like, what did they need from me? But he always just sends me a checklist of what is needed from me for that year. And even sometimes there's like new things that are needed, you know, like, oh, he knows that we had kids, so now we need this. And it just kind of gives me a checklist of like, here's everything, gather this up, give it to me, and then I'll file it all for you or whatever. So for how much the government seems to love to get our money, they don't make it very easy to get it from point A to point B. So it's to have that checklist, I think, is super important.
Yeah. Do you remember the file your taxes on a postcard? That doesn't seem like it worked out that.
Yeah, no, it definitely did not. So
to others, I would say other people in their futures, kind of same thing. You know, but hire a professional, get checklist, develop a plan. Right? Get a plan together from the financial planner. Develop a plan. Have a vision. Put it on a board. Talk about it, think about it, dream about it. Have date nights with it, right? Take your wife out on date night and just dream about the future. And I think the answers will come to you from there, what you should do next. Yeah,
and we even have a resource too. We have essentially a budget guide just for the project side of things, but it essentially helps you budget out for a shoot. So I'll make it available in the description, but essentially it's just like a spreadsheet you plug in. It has all the different things you either need for the shoot or you might even be thinking about that you need for a shoot. Your shooters, your editing, do we need to rent out a space? Do we need to hire talent? All that's on there. You put how much those things cost, and then it'll automatically formulate, okay, this is how much of the expense is going to be. So I can include that for this episode too. Obviously, it doesn't help them with all their finances, but I think that's probably a helpful resource just to have things like that, those assets that are essentially telling you, okay, these things cost this, so this is how much the total is going to be. So if you're charging less than this, you're actually losing money on this project. So
right. Yeah, I think that's insightful and wise.
Awesome. Well, we're going to wrap it up now. Jose, if anyone wants to find you, what's the easiest and best way to find you?
Easiest way is wisdominvestments.com. My email is jose@wisdominvestments.com. So if you want to shoot me an email, that's great. We're in a couple other places as well, but website's probably the easiest place.
Yeah. Or you could find him inside the Bellworks building. I can tell you where his desk is and everything.
I'm behind locked doors. I'm behind. Don't come in here. I'm behind locked doors.
I'll scan them in. No. But thanks for joining me, Jose. I appreciate all of your wisdom that you have on investments.
Thank you, Travis.
And but no, I greatly appreciate your time and your friendship. And until next time, stay creative.